So hello and welcome back to our podcast, Ayahuasca Avatars. And today we are returning from our summer break with Maestro Hamilton, who is a traditional medico vegetalista that he's going to explain to us what that is. So stay tuned. He is the founder of the Blue Morpho Tours and Academy, and also has many other interesting offerings that you're going to hear about. So stay with us. And thank you, Hamilton, for coming and being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you. So my first question always to people, because we don't know each other, I mean, a little bit know maybe about each other in the space, but personally we haven't met, and it's such a pleasure to meet you in kind of person, virtual in person, right? That tell me about your calling to the medicine, because when somebody does something like this, that like dedicates their whole life to this path and creates so many things that you did over the last 20 years, I'm pretty sure that was a good reason for that. It wasn't just like, yeah, I had a great life, but one day I thought, why not? Or so, yeah, was there like some interesting story? How did you get into this world of plant medicine? What called you, and what was your kind of personal like motivation or inspiration to start?
Yeah, my personal motivation to start came in my early 20s. And I had just graduated from the university, and I had lived, I think, a pretty typical United States, California upbringing, but at the same time had my own personal issues, my own depression and my own inner darknesses, I think like many of us find in that period of time in our age. And I came to this place where I had lost a mentor, and I had gone through a great trauma, and didn't really know which direction my life would take anymore. And I turned to my mom about it. I was in a really dark place, and she said, well, give your life to spirit. And so I didn't even know what that meant, but I was with her in the kitchen that night, and I turned to the windows and the wall, and I gave my life to spirit in that moment. And I knew something fundamental had happened. I didn't understand it. I didn't have a frame of reference for it, but it was something deep inside me, very true and very real. And I knew it was also something that I couldn't come back from. It wasn't just like a passing thought that you have. I had done something, and a very short time after that, spirit really came through and awakened in my consciousness. And I had what now I think is, pretty clear as an awakening of consciousness and awakening to spirit. And I think many people have had that experience now as well, where spirit and energy becomes very powerful and very real in someone's life. And so that happened for me. And I started getting really clear dreams and really clear awareness and messages in my meditations that I needed to go to Peru, and that I was going to pursue shamanism and be trained in shamanism. And so I followed that calling to Peru to see, if it were true. And it turned out to be true. And I got accepted into a lineage, and I started formal apprenticeship in 2002. And it was in an ayahuasca-based lineage. And so I had participated when I was seeking my apprenticeship in my first ayahuasca ceremony. And the final vision I had that night was that I would stay there in the forest, and that I would apprentice, and that I would learn the medicine arts there.
Wow, that's a pretty clear calling, like we talk about it in the podcast a lot, that people who go for an ayahuasca retreat, a lot of people feel called to open a retreat center afterwards, and translate, the messages that way. But yeah, that's pretty amazing, your experience. So before you went to like Peru to train with medicine, did you have awareness of the ayahuasca? Did you know what that was? It was something in your world already, or you had no idea what this is and you just took a leap of faith, or how was that?
Earlier in my life, I had heard about it. We have to go back in time to 2001, 2002, where it wasn't really spoken about so much. And so I had heard of one other person that many years before that had been down in South America and had participated in one ceremony. And I had heard about it in two books that people had written about shamanism that related to that South American part of the world. And so that was my only frame of reference. And I didn't go to Peru specifically looking for ayahuasca. I had heard about it. I had heard about Huachuma, San Pedro as these visionary plants that were part of the practices. But I was really interested in that time just in spirit and where spirit was guiding me and leading me. And it ultimately led me to ayahuasca. And so I drank in my first ayahuasca ceremony, really just to have an exploration. I was being guided there, but I didn't go in thinking ayahuasca was going to be my path or my career. I thought it might help me find my path, and I thought it might open up a vision. I had very little awareness and was significantly innocent and ignorant at that time of what was awaiting me in my early 20s. And
my God, I can so relate to that feeling.
And then I found myself in the ayahuasca experience, and then it felt like I had gotten sucked into it. Like I in the experience itself, I was brought into a kind of initiation. And I don't think I actually left that place for many, many years. I think I was taken in that first ceremony into the realms of ayahuasca, and I stayed there within that space apprenticing for, the next 13 or 14 years. And so it was a very unique experience, a very profound one, obviously. And as I continued after that experience to go deeper into the apprenticeship and into the medicine and learn more about it over the duration of years, I kept on learning and understanding how profound it is and how much more there was to learn and discover. And so that just kept drawing me in further and further over the years. And I think one of the most beautiful things about it is that even to the day, it is still uniquely impactful and powerful experience and something that keeps teaching.
Yes, I can really resonate with that. Like I went to Peru in 2012, and definitely, since then I I feel the same way, that it's just the mystery is getting bigger and bigger. I think I saw on your website that you did this kind of 1 year apprenticeship or training, and afterwards you started assisting people or serving people. I'm not sure if I understand well, but I would like to know, and I'm sure people would like to understand better what kind of training we are talking about, because this is in the space right today of safety and who did what and what is that good for. So can you explain to us like what is like a traditional, medical training? How does that look like? How long does it take? What kind of happens there, so people have a little bit of understanding, because it's not kind of a Western, you go to university kind of training. So yeah, how does that work?
The training is really extensive. And I think it's important to highlight that a médico vegetalista in the lineages is trained not just to give somebody plant medicines and administer them, but to also understand the experience to a profound level and be able to guide people through it. And so it isn't just a hands-off approach of giving them ayahuasca and then the ayahuasca does everything after that. It's actually a continuously guided series of experiences. And the ayahuasca is used to diagnose the afflictions or the diseases that people have, and also to help create the treatment protocols that a person would experience that may not include visionary plants. It could include poultices and teas or tinctures that would be made from the various medicinal plants that are found really around where people live, just in the forest itself. It's the forest is a great pharmacopoeia. And so the training is very extensive. You start the training in ayahuasca ceremonies and what are plant medicine dietas. And during that period of time, you are taken through what are called tests of virtue. And they are rites of passage that are continuous through the nature of the training. So traditional training is between 5 to 10 years. And during that time, you're going to participate in an average of 100 ayahuasca ceremonies or more a year. And you're going to be in plant medicine dieta most of the time. So there are lineages that dieta the whole time, and there are ones that have dietas that go for periods of time and then rest and recuperation. And during that time as well, you'll experience tests of virtue. And the tests of virtue are continuous rites of passage that will test your strength and your ability to survive. And you'll be pushed through to experience all of the different states of consciousness and mental states that a person would need to understand so that they could be an appropriate guide for their community or their tribe.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds pretty intense. So, and of course, the learning never stops, as we said at the beginning. So, when is the point when you can start actually leading ceremonies or leading people on these journeys? Well, like, do you have any supervision at the beginning? Like, how at one point you give permission from the spirit of the plant, from your teacher, from the lineage? Like, how does that work? Who evaluates that? Okay, now you are ready to do this.
Yeah, in our lineage, apprentices are not allowed to serve ayahuasca. They're allowed to sit with the maestros while they practice, and that's part of apprenticeship, is to sit with them and learn alongside them. But only when you're granted the title of maestro are you allowed to then serve the medicine on your own. And early in my apprenticeship, I functioned as a translator and would participate to the best of my abilities in the ceremony alongside my teachers. But it's considered taboo to serve medicine, or it's considered very dangerous and not allowed. In fact, you don't touch the ayahuasca. No one even handles the bottle of it. It's considered sacred and off limits, except in the hands of a maestro. And to give perspective to the duration, I'd like to tell a story. During my apprenticeship, I was finishing my first year of apprenticeship, and I had participated, and at that point, to about between 60 and 70 ceremonies. And I had not heard one compliment or nice thing from my teachers. And after one of the ceremonies, I was finishing a long and arduous plant medicine ceremony, and the teacher kind of laid back in a chair and took a puff of mapacho tobacco smoke and kind of said the number of ceremonies I had been in and the dieta, and he told me he was really proud of me. And I felt this great upswell, like, wow, I finally, the first nice thing he said to me. And then he took another puff off the mapacho and he said, "We'll see what you look like when you have 1,000 ceremonies." And then that just was like the balloon popping and crashing down of the amount of training that they really thought was just common and part of the lineage. And so,
thank you for explaining it, because I really want to bring this message through the people who are thinking that because they've been on one dieta or some 3 months apprenticeship program with somebody, they are entitled to serve the medicine and they are some kind of masters now, because that's really happening now in the especially in the psychedelic wellness space. So it's really great that people can educate themselves through more expert people. What is that require that you got to the point? So, and as you said, you don't only work with ayahuasca. So during your training, how does other plants, or like how does that work? Like how many plants do you work, or you always keep bringing in new plant spirits, new plant allies? Or just tell us a little bit about other plants, because a traditional doctor, right, you said it works not only with the ayahuasca.
The medico vegetalista is trained in the visionary arts, with ayahuasca and the tree dietas. And that really is a plant spirit medicine practice. And it's a visionary practice. But then there are all of the different ailments and treatments that don't require visionary practice. And they're treated with medicinal plants in a, traditional way that looks like tinctures and teas and poultices and applications of the plants. So there are hundreds depending on the lineage. And in our lineage, we worked with between 100 and 200 different kinds of medicinal plants. There are ones as purgatives to cleanse parasites. There are ones for inflammation. There are ones to support the healing of joint injury, like sprains or ligament and tendon tears. There's ones for cuts that are antibacterial, and there are antiviral medicines for the kinds of common colds and virus infections. There are ones to treat cancer, etc. So there's a wide variety of plants that are utilized. And often I think the difficulty in Westerners experiencing that kind of medicine is that the treatments are typically very long duration. So that the use of the medicinal plants could be a 3-month, a 6-month, a 1-year healing plan. And people just don't have the ability to go to the Amazon and be there for that period of time. But for the locals living there, that's common how they would treat different kinds of illnesses and chronic disease. Very similar to here in Western medicine, where they would give you a pill-based medication for a very long time. The difference, I think, in the Amazon is that typically they look for what they would think of as cures for the illnesses. And so out of a certain period of time, they would expect the treatment to be done and for you to be fully recovered or recouped from it.
Right, right. And were you kind of required to experience all of these plants, like, like taking them, dieting them, or do you work with the plant spirits with them in the medicine space, or do you work with a plant master who kind of does the harvesting and the preparation and all of these plants, or how is kind of the practical side?
All of the above that you just said. The practical side is that there are the plants that you ingest to learn. They're called the teacher plants, or the mamas, the maestros. And so there are those plants, and they'll teach you about the plant medicine of the forest. Then there are the plants that you learn from them, not by ingesting them, but by calling their plant spirit into the ceremony. And typically, like the patterns that you see in your background, those kinds of geometric patterns are called also Icaro. And each one of the plant spirits has a different set of patterns. And so you learn the nature of those patterns, and through being in vision with them, you learn the application of the medicine. And that's also substantiated and supported in the physical practice with your maestros. So you'll learn the patterns, you'll learn the Icaros, and you'll learn the appropriate identification, collecting, and preparation of the medicines and administration of them. And through that entire process, you then practice plant spirit medicine.
Right, right. Thank you for explaining it in such a great detail so people can really understand, what this takes. And I want to dive in, to the other side of the process, which is after the ceremony. And I want to ask you about your integration process in terms of, obviously, your whole life completely changed. And for a lot of people who work with, especially with the ayahuasca, they experience this like kind of culture shock and this like clashing of the two worlds, after their experience. And that's the reason they need that integration support, because it can be really, jarring experience. You went to Peru, you kind of stayed there, integrated your life in there, but I'm sure that you also had to go through your own integration and consolidation of your life before and now, and I don't know, in the future. Or so how did it go for you, and what were your kind of personal challenges throughout all this process?
Yeah, integration is a continuous process. And I like to frame it in that we're not trying to just improve what our previous understanding of reality was. There's a healing that takes place, but there's also a learning. And when we learn and we receive the wisdom, we need to bring that into our lives and really implement it and bring it forth. And so there can be culture shock, but I like to frame that the culture shock is because I just didn't know all of this other reality existed and was part of my life. So I first try to take it away from being this was one reality and this is another. They're merged. Just the ayahuasca helped me see that there was a lot more going on in my life, and that there's a spirit behind everything, and that there's energy, and there's a multidimensional reality, and that it's fundamentally real. And so I want to bring that into my daily life, whether I'm in the Western developed world in the United States, or I'm in a city, somewhere in the Amazon, et cetera, or I'm traveling. I just want to understand that there's a spiritual context to life that's helping me open my mind. And then the second part of it is to have support through that process. I think one of the most important kinds of support is just community. So it's the people that you can talk with that have had similar experiences, that are facing similar challenges, in understanding that the people back home didn't have this experience with you. They don't even know it exists. And you need to have people that do know it exists and can just speak freely and openly about it. And so we've spent a lot of time in the last 20 years developing community that's very intimate and sharing and open about these kinds of experiences. And so often our community members will say they love our community because you can say anything that someone else might consider strange. And in our community, it'll be accepted and we'll talk about it. And so I think that's nourishing and supportive for people and really important. And then having a commitment to yourself. itself is really key to integration. So we create integration packages for our participants, and so they can decide for themselves how much integration and individual support they would like. And so it also helps to have, people who are integration specialists who can help you be accountable to the changes that you're making, who can really support you and understand you through that process, who can bring accountability to it and really help you manifest your intentions. Because after the ayahuasca experience or plant medicine experience, you have a window of time where it's really easy to make change. And so you want to embrace that and really utilize that period of time. And it's different for different people, but most people say it lasts up to 3 to 6 months, that there's this real fertile time to make change. So it's really helpful to have support, and all of that adds up to really great integration. My final piece and favorite piece is to bring our spiritual life into our daily life. And that's about our frame of mind. And so I teach how to shift our frame of mind to be aware of the deep spiritual connection and the teachings that I call sanctuary, how to create a sanctuary around us that provides us protection and safety and deep spiritual communion throughout our day, so that it's easier for us to understand the deep spiritual experiences we have in ceremony, and then how we bring that into our daily life.
Right, absolutely. I so agree with everything. We share a lot about this on this platform and how important it is. And yeah, my program is like a 1 year long integration container. It's a one-on-one, so people get around 50 sessions, and it's the results that they get with the support and with the container versus without any support is just like you cannot compare. It's just so important, and very worth to invest in, to have container for you, apart from obviously community, what you said, and having that support. But like a lot of people, right, they have to work through their own trauma, your own shadows and everything, as you mentioned. And so yeah, I'm really curious about your, you mentioned a little bit about your personal journey with depression at the beginning and things like that, because I think a lot of people think that if somebody is a teacher, or now you are a master, kind of, people can think what that mean, it depends on the people. But I think a lot of people think that these people like you are perfect, and you are just like, you are some, no, I don't like some high pedestal. So maybe can you share a little bit about what was difficult for you, or what kind of challenges you had to go through, and maybe if you have any challenges now. I mean, you don't have to be super personal, but just, to help people to understand that just because somebody is a teacher or a guide or support to other people, that doesn't mean that they don't have anything else, to kind of evolve or like, I don't know.
I think it's a beautiful question. The inner darkness that we all suffer and the suffering that we go through because of it is real, and it's part of the path. And there's a lot of talk in the space about the shadow and the shadow sides of us, and that has to be faced continuously through training. And I came to plant medicine very young in my life, so it wasn't that I accumulated decades of adulthood and then tried to deal with it and approach it from plant medicine. I was becoming an adult in plant medicine and growing into an adult in that space with ever increasing responsibilities. And so first it was going through the childhood traumas and learning to deal with the broken heart that you experience in your youth, as well as waking up to the idea that the idealizations of our society are not accurate, and that many of our dreams can't come true, sadly, that we would like. And there's a kind of youthfulness that we have to outgrow. And I experienced all of that, and facing my own shadow of my own ego and the competitive nature that we were taught and grew up in. And then as I went through the process of growing up and becoming an adult in the medicine, it was also learning how to continuously face the challenges of life that bring up all of the most difficult aspects of ourselves. And so I was in a unique position to be, facing those challenges, but always about ready to head into another medicine ceremony. So, having problems at work with a coworker and not sure how to communicate about it and deal with it, and then back into the medicine, or dealing with a family trauma and something difficult within family, and then back into the medicine, or dealing with an economic crisis and then back into the medicine, etc. And so I think that process was unique for me because there was always ayahuasca to support. But I think that that's a continuous process in life, and that we must have deep humility about it. And now more than ever, not because I've become a maestro, but in the nature of our lives, you don't transcend the difficulties, you grow into greater difficulty. So I think what happens is that you become a little bit better, not a lot better, but a little bit better at addressing how to handle them. And you have more courage and more acceptance and more willingness to face the challenges that you're being called to transcend and to embrace. But I don't think the difficulty goes away. I think that's something that is inherently challenging about life, and that we all share it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I so resonate with what you say, and that's the same thing that I say to people, and I often share, things that I'm still working on, and it's like in the process, right? So, after a while, when you reach certain level, you have certain experience, like status, in the plant medicine world. Of course, as you said, you always keep learning through the spirit of the plant, and there is like an infinite exploration that is going on and learning. But do you have any outside physical kind of check system around you, especially that you are kind of the leader of this big organization and you have a lot of followers and community and stuff like that? And recently the whole controversy with Soul Quest, and I know that safety is also very important for you, and professional, ethical, and competent care. So how does that look like for you and in your organization?
Well, safety has always been the most important part of our organization. And so I think something that a lot of people don't know is that Blue Morpho, my organization, and myself personally were instrumental in getting government support in Peru for what was the plant medicine industry. And so when I started Blue Morpho, it wasn't yet accepted throughout Peru that plant medicines would be widely accepted for foreigners to come and experience. It was something that was allowed, but in a very small scale, and there wasn't a plant medicine industry. There were only a few people that were doing this, and it was accepted at that level, but not on a larger scale. And I had really the luck and honor, and I was guided by spirit to both know at that time the state governor in Peru of the area that we lived in, and one of the congressperson. And the congressman and the state governor got together with me, and we discussed what plant medicine could look like as an expansion of their tourism industry. And safety was the number one concern. So in that process, we defined what safety standards would look like. And part of that was medical pre-screening, and also access to emergency care if necessary. It was also being licensed by the Peruvian government and running a legitimate and regulated business. It was recognizing the needs of the people coming to us, the guests and participants, and making sure that we had adequate care for them, which could look like having the right first aid kit or emergency medical training and staff that would know how to be able to handle an emergency if necessary. There's also the design of the locations where the ceremonies take place themselves, so that the actual container for the ceremony is safe. And so it's just layer upon layer of understanding about how to be able to provide that safety, as simple as down to having an emergency vehicle, so that if you have to go to a hospital really quickly, you have the means to do so. So we pioneered those layers of safety and brought that forth as a standard. And then internally, I think that there has to be great humility in the nature of your work, and you have to be open to suggestions and improvement and the checks and balances that are provided by your team. And so first you set a very high level of safety and conduct standards. And then from there, you need to have regular meetings about how we're improving and always improving upon the safety and professionalism that we can offer our participants.
That sounds amazing. Do you have like like documents on your website that people can look at? What kind of, guidelines do you have? What do you require? What standards of protocols do you follow and things like that? Is that available?
Yeah, when somebody comes to us and they sign up for a retreat, or start the process, they first go through medical screening, and then they have one-on-one interaction with representatives of our organization to help prepare them. So we offer first preparation for the experience, and then the experience itself, and then aftercare programs to be able to continue the integration of the work. And so all of that information comes through in guides that we provide our prospective client.
Okay, I understand. Like a totally different question, but since what you said, it just came to my mind that do you think that you were called so strongly to the medicine at such a young age? Because as you said, it's so much harder to do it when you're 50 and you accumulated so much trauma and dense energy, and maybe it's a little bit easier to kind of get to a certain level if you don't have that type of baggage, because obviously you are younger. And then regarding what happened, to what you just mentioned, expanding the tourism in Peru to include plant medicine and ayahuasca. And I really received information about this in ceremonies that, the plant, also the spirit of the plant wanted to come out of that area and spread to other places, because obviously the destruction of habitat, the nature that is going on there. So I did just hit me this idea that, why not the plants would call you for this specific role? Like, have you ever thought about that?
I have thought about it. The plants are incredibly intelligent. And for the people that have participated with them, they understand how the plants have a way to be able to utilize your own intelligence and support and guide you in that process. And I think that ayahuasca, specifically as a plant, in communication and connection with the entire forest, is guiding a transformation within humanity. And I'm very interested in the perspective of what does the growing popularity of ayahuasca look like from ayahuasca's perspective. So a lot of people talk about the perspective of the encroachment, the movement of the plants and their uses beyond the indigenous cultures that first started utilizing them and learning from them. But I like to think, what is ayahuasca doing? And I think ayahuasca is creating a network of people that's helping shift our awareness. And I don't think any one person in that network is more important or special than another person. I think each person in the network who's experienced ayahuasca is a carrier of great sacred knowledge and is helping everybody else know that it exists and that there's something important about it. And it's still very early. This is the first time in history that lineages that held this knowledge and the understanding of the plants in secrecy for thousands and thousands of years are deciding that it's time to open this knowledge up and do something collectively about it. And it's a common acceptance and theme now that is happening amongst many indigenous cultures and the first Westerners that were allowed to learn in those cultures. And so I think this is a movement that's starting, and it's really being fueled by ayahuasca and the other intelligent plants from the Amazon. And I'm continuously interested in how that's going to evolve and how it's going to shift the human narrative.
How do you see yourself in this bigger picture? What is like your personal mission and vision, with the plants, with everything that you are doing? I guess, your professional and personal vision probably the same. So like, yeah, can you share that with us? Like which part do you feel more passionate about, in this whole picture?
My greatest passion is to continue helping people understand the importance of their spirituality, their connection with the universe, and their soul. And I think we're in a time where the way our mind processes has separated ourselves from our spirituality. And I think it's created a great illusion of separation. And I want to help support people transcend that illusion of separation and understand that we live in union with Source and that there is great potentiality for us within that union once we embrace it. I'm concerned for the global state of affairs. I'm concerned for humanity on a species level because of the continuous advancements in geopolitical crisis, climate crisis, and technology crisis. And I've been lucky enough to know people in those fields that have been able to help me understand how imminent this is. And so I think part of my personal mission is to continue to help those that are open to understand their deep resonance with the universe, the purpose behind their life, and to support them in their awakenings.
That is really beautiful and very much needed for sure. So I'm excited to hear about your connection with technology and AI. I don't know what you're doing with that, so you're going to explain that to us. But like something that I was thinking about is that, a lot of people believe, and there's parts of this argument that I quite resonate with, that technology used in this way that we are using it today is basically actually making us more stupid and more incapable and shutting down the natural abilities that we have to telepathy, to connect, to communicate from distance, to feel into, tap into certain things, right? That can be developed, but now you don't have to even, read a paper map because, your phone is telling you that to turn right here, all that kind of stuff. This is just like, so, and I do not resonate with the idea that technology would be evil or anything like that. Obviously, it's just a tool that can be used. But yeah, I would love to hear what you think about that and what is that you are doing, with this technology and how these two worlds kind of comes together in your alchemized experience.
I think you said it best when you described all of these technologies as tools. And so I like to go back in history and I think of our ancestors, the very first people of the planet who are deciding to make some of the first tools. And from that moment in history, our ancestors have been continuously making tools. And some of them are tools that have been used for incredibly humanitarian purposes, and some of the tools have been used for great destructive purposes. And I think ultimately the tools are neutral and people are the ones that decide their use. And so when I think of where we are now in our tool creation, we make very complex tools with computers. And so I think first we have to embrace the understanding that we're, as a collective society and individually, tool users. And we have to understand the importance of those tools and how much of our autonomy or our sovereignty we want to give to the tool. I think what's hard about the world right now is that there are a lot of tools that to continue to compete in this world force your participation and use of them. And that's a very difficult thing that we have to face right now as a society. As we move on to artificial intelligence, we see that artificial intelligence is a series of tools that can greatly support us, but also ultimately remove our autonomy and our sovereignty. And so my interest in the nature of these technologies is in how we can steer them to be positive for us and ultimately support and help the nature of our own autonomy and our own sovereignty. And I think if we don't focus on that, the natural use of market forces and economic forces around the tools will create a weaponization and a negative implementation of them. So I think that there needs to be a checks and balance for that. And there needs to be a group of creators that are interested in seeing how the nature of these tools can really benefit people. And then in doing so, offer them a choice for humane-based tools in comparison to extractive-based tools. The Web 2 world has been focused on extractive-based tools that have really been pointed at the human ego and the most basic nature within us. And that has created a great problem in the world. And so I think there must be intervention now at this point so that we can potentially offset that or at least give people a choice.
I totally agree with what you're saying. And I love technology. Right now we can have this conversation, pretty good quality, and broadcast it on the internet and all that and connect. So I really agree with what you're saying. But can you tell some examples? Okay, how are we going to do that? How are you doing that? Do you have some specific project or something that's like, okay, this is an example of this is how it could be, instead of what we have now?
Some of the projects that really relate are based around the utilization of the technology to better support you in your productivity and your ability to access mostly information, but also support in association with that information. So for instance, right now, one of the biggest problems of the internet isn't the internet itself, but it's misinformation in the internet. And AI tools can help provide a great filter for misinformation. They can also be used to create the misinformation. And so we can utilize a tool to help us filter the information that we get and qualify the nature of that information for its truthfulness. And I think that's a great project that I know people working on. There's another project that I've heard of where many people in various teams are looking to embody the great wisdom of wisdom cultures into AIs that can better deliver that wisdom to somebody when they need it. So there's a ability, for instance, of projects inside Buddhism to bring wisdom teachings and preserve them inside AI. I know of another project that is looking to expand on our understanding of language, where AI is being used to bridge the gap between humans and non-humans in their communication in the form of language. So right now, the project is working on whales and how whales speak and how humans can speak to whales and whales can speak back to humans.
That's
So there's
awesome.
an interface for that. And I know in spirit, we can speak with the spirit of the whales. And I know in vision, we can communicate with them. But this is actually going into how whales use sound waves to communicate and how we use sound waves to communicate, and an interface that allows that to be translated into whale language and then back into human language. And so
Okay.
that's a very unique project as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Maybe this is a very simple question, but I'm totally not technologically advanced. And do I understand well that AI is something that is created by people or by, the algorithm learning from the information that is on the internet? Is that correct?
I think that it is true in a current state, but there are many teams that are also looking for non-verbal ways or non-internet data ways of training different kinds of AI models. So that's a starting point. I think that was where there was a big breakthrough, that the AI systems could learn from human language and that they could be trained on human language and human training data that came from the internet. But now there are teams looking at all different forms of ways to influence the AI systems and to understand the output that they give. And so I think it's a time of great experimentation. And I think it's akin to, and as important as, before humans understood metals to after. So think of in human history, the deep history, humans had lived for a long time before they understood how to wield and manipulate metals.
Mhm.
And since then, the entire course of humanity changed.
Mm.
And this is of that same level of importance with what's going on with AI right now. So we're in a very early stage of this. And the way that these systems will ultimately be utilized will be proliferated in every way that they have human importance.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, because I feel that right now this is pretty biased because there's a lot of people living on this earth who are not on the internet and has nothing to do with technology and don't speak English and all that kind. So, where's their input into the global computer, right? So, yeah, it's so many interesting questions, but maybe we do a separate episode about that. We can go deeper because I'm sure a lot of people are super interested, and especially how you can utilize these things for, spiritual growth and personal growth, and to help the world and to to be in service, and share your gifts, and that's super cool because a lot of spiritual people are anti-technology. So it's nice, to have you. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience before we wrap it up for today, or some offering that you want to highlight, or any kind of message that you want to send to people? Feel free to do that.
The first message is just, if you know that there's something more going on world, either for yourself or in general, please know that plant medicines and ayahuasca are an incredible way to explore that. That there's a lot of talk about healing going on in the world, but my teachers emphasized also learning and discovery. And so there's a point to come to the medicines, and you'll always find healing to do, but there's also a tremendous unveiling of what's deep inside you, your purpose, your mission, your reason for being alive, and this connection you have with spirit and with the universe. And that I really feel it's worth exploring that while you're alive. It's one of the greatest gifts that we can explore, and to know that that's available through these experiences. And if you would like to come to one of our plant medicine events, we have ayahuasca and Wachuma retreats in Peru, both in the Amazon and outside of Cusco on the way to Machu Picchu in the Sacred Valley, which is a beautiful place. And we have both ayahuasca and Wachuma, and pure Wachuma retreats. So depending on the kinds of medicines that are most suited for you, you can come on one of those retreats. And if you have a plant medicine practice, whether it's personal, just to you, for you with friends and family, or something that you do professionally, we offer training so that you can get the expertise that you need to be safe and knowledgeable and professional in what you do. And so we have a foundations course and a facilitator course, and those are available online. You can take them from anywhere in the world. And I really want people who are utilizing any kind of psychedelic or plant medicine to have the training and the knowledge that they need to do it safely and professionally.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're going to share all your platforms and links to all your offerings. And yeah, I hope that you will be back to talk about many more of the topics. And it was such a pleasure to have this conversation for you. Thank you so much for coming and being here with us today.
Same. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And for our listeners, just stay tuned for the next episode, which is coming out shortly. And till the end of October, we have one more space for the integration facilitator training for this year's cohort. So if you want to if this is what you call to within the plant medicine space, to help people with their ayahuasca integration, to hold container for them before and after the ceremony, then connect with me and we're going to give you the links for that to have a free discovery call. And also another exciting thing is a new podcast that we're going to launch, which is about self-discovery to hopefully reach a wider audience, not just people who are specifically called plant medicine, just people who are called deeper into their self-discovery journey. And I'm very excited about that. So stay tuned because that's coming soon. And thank you so much for listening. Leave a comment and follow us and subscribe to our channel. Thank you and have a beautiful day. Thank you for listening and leave a comment if you enjoyed this episode. Help us grow our community by sharing this episode with your friends and subscribe to our channel to receive the latest on ayahuasca-assisted therapy. To embark on your healing journey or to start a new career in psychedelic-assisted therapy, go to my website, avatarhealingarts.com, and get in touch. And of course, stay tuned for the next episode.